There are certain things that are within our quote unquote control, but there's so much beyond that, those are things in God's hands. Like that's not something that we can follow through on the action steps, but 99% of the outcomes are not up to us. It's kind of like when you're someone who has spent years stepping on the scale every day. And I know a lot of women in midlife probably still feel enslaved to the scale. And what you do, your actions today might or might not impact what that scale says, but you have to back up and say, am I just trusting that the actions, what I follow through on doing, the habits that I'm employing today, are they the good and the right thing to do? Whatever that outcome might be, the only thing that you can control are your actions. And that's still really powerful.
Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Type 1 in Midlife podcast. I'm your host, Melissa Slemp. I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes at 14 years old and now founder and CEO of Abundant Health with Melissa. And as a certified health coach, I know the unique challenges of managing diabetes in midlife and beyond. So I've created a coaching model that has empowered hundreds of women to thrive despite their diagnosis. And each week, I'll bring you conversations and strategies with guest experts, along with insights from my own 40 plus years of living with type 1 diabetes. I'll also share how my faith empowers me both emotionally and helps me to navigate the daily challenges. So if you're a woman ready to redefine your diabetes journey, this podcast is for you. So before we dive in, remember this podcast isn't a substitute for personalized medical advice. Always consult with your physician or medical professional before making any changes to your diet, insulin dosages, or healthcare plan. I am so excited to bring in today's guest. Megan Dahlman is here, and she's here to share her story and so much wisdom in the nutrition and health space. In her 17 years of training professionals, Megan has become the sought-after trainer for women over 40 who want to feel their physical best for years to come. With a degree in exercise science and as a certified strength and conditioning specialist, she has an uncanny ability for taking complicated aspects about your body and making them simple, doable, and actually sustainable. How about that? And she has her own show, Care Simplified. We will definitely link that opportunity for you to follow her and listen to her over there on her show. And she was inspired to work in this field by her own journey of overcoming insecurities about her body through exercise. And she is so passionate about training women of all ages to feel strong, pain-free, and confident in their bodies. And she understands the importance of everyday movement in maintaining insulin sensitivity and eliminating pain, such as frozen shoulder and hip pain, which can really escalate with autoimmune diseases. And she believes that building muscle is crucial. It's so important as we want to age well. And she advocates for increasing protein to intake of protein to prevent unhealthy eating habits. And she really, she debunks the myths about weight gain and emphasizes the benefits of NEAT, her own tagline this is non-exercise activity thermogenesis. So listen in for an explanation about this process that she recommends for all of us, especially to manage blood sugar. She also, she reminds her clients to eat their pros, which we're a big believer here on this show as well. That is protein and produce for a healthier lifestyle as we build our plate. And Megan leaves you with 3 simple steps that you can begin right now to build sustainable habits. So we hope you enjoy the show. Listen in, and I know you're going to enjoy this conversation as much as I did recording it. Nothing you hear on this Type 1 and Midlife podcast should be a substitute for professional medical advice. Please always consult your doctor before changing your diet, insulin dosages, or healthcare plan. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome. I am here today with Megan Dahlman. How are you today?
I'm so wonderful, Melissa. Thank you for having me on your show.
Yeah, you're a joy. I follow you on your own podcast, and I just love your straight to the point help. And you
Yeah.
serve a very obviously my community is type 1 diabetes women
Yeah.
over 40, generally speaking. I know I serve clients and there's a lot of listeners here that are not necessarily midlife yet, but just like what you do, what we share and what we teach applies for everybody, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, yeah. And
Yeah.
I think the sooner we can get this on board, the better. That's another whole conversation, right?
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
Yeah.
And no matter when you start addressing your fitness and paying attention to your physical activity, it's never too late.
Mm-hmm.
But you're absolutely right. The sooner we can get these healthy habits going and in place, like they do take time to develop a routine and get established and find that consistency. So it is helpful. So wherever people are at right now, today's a good day to start.
Yeah, that's right. Every day's a new day for sure.
Yeah.
So, what inspires you to work in this field?
Well, it's a big question and it goes back
Okay.
a long time. I was an athlete in high school, but as a female athlete in high school, I had my own just insecurities with my
Mm-hmm.
body. And I have to say, a lot of my pursuit of fitness was a little bit of a mask for wanting to be skinny, wanting to be pretty, wanting to have a quote unquote perfect body. And
Mm-hmm.
so I always say that what compelled me to get into the industry was probably not the most wonderful reasons. It was like I kind of wanted to know all the ways to make my body perfect.
Mm. It's
And
interesting. Yeah.
yeah, and I struggled for a long time with my own body image.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, but through education, understanding how your body operates, how your body works, what nutrients do in your body, what happens to your body if you don't have nutrients, what exercise does for your body, what happens to your body if you over exercise. All of these things just help me get this grander picture of what it really means to have a body that feels really good.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the beauty of as we get older, we care less and less, hopefully, about what other people think about us and think about our bodies. And we don't take that into consideration quite as much as maybe when we were more insecure in our
Yeah.
teens, 20s, 30s, even.
Yeah.
And that is what I absolutely love about working with women that are 40 and older is that those days are behind us of relying on other people's opinions to determine our actions. And now it's like I'm free from those obligations and I just want to do the things that help me feel good now and will help me feel amazing in 20, 30 years from now too.
I love that.
So
Yeah.
it's this evolution. And I think for most of us women, we come to this point where we kind of are at that crossroads where we have to ask ourselves, why am I doing this? Why does this matter to me? And hopefully we all get to that point where we can say, this matters because it feels good. And
Mm-hmm.
I want to take care of my body really, really well for myself and for the people I love.
Mm. Yeah. And, a word came up in my mind when you were talking, and it's really about control. I think,
Mm,
we are given our body, our shape, our metabolic system, because we all
yeah.
are different. And I think maybe, and I was in the same boat as well at that age. And exercise, I will say though, even with type 1 diabetes, I never had an eating disorder, knock on. I'm so thankful for that because I know that
Yeah.
is very common and it's becoming more and more realized, which is good. And I've had some guests on the show talk into that. But for me, exercise has always been something I love it. And it's something I enjoy doing. And it's the one thing that impacts my blood sugar
Yeah.
management that I can control. So there's the word control that I like to use because and this is probably how you live and this is what you train and how you operate as well. This is something that we can put our own, kind of a rule book around it, set boundaries, set expectations.
Right.
But then again, that can get out of control as well, too. So with anything, there still has to be some sort of awareness about really what our relationship to it is, right?
Exactly. And you hit the nail on the head. There are certain things that are within our quote unquote control, but there's so much beyond that, those are things in God's hands. Like that's not something that we can follow through on the action steps, but 99% of the outcomes are not up to us.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like when you're someone who has spent years stepping on the scale every day. And I know a lot of women in midlife probably still feel enslaved to the scale. And what you do, your actions today might or might not impact what that scale says, but you have to back up and say, am I just trusting that the actions, what I follow through on doing, the habits that I'm employing today, are they the good and the right thing to do? Whatever that outcome might be, the only thing that you can control are your actions. And that's still really powerful. Like exercising can absolutely have an impact on your blood sugars. Exercising absolutely can have an impact on muscle mass and joint health and so many other things that are within your control. But recognizing that there are sometimes some outcomes that aren't really up to us. And that is okay too.
Yeah, really good point. You need to build a stronger foundation. Do you need a framework to better manage type 1 diabetes? I know this may sound like a silly question, and I know this is so vital for all of us. But it starts with our thoughts, right? It plays such an important role in shaping this journey and how we accept our diagnosis and how we approach diabetes management with more resilience and how dedicated and committed we can be in order to bring a sense of freedom and really an overall happier life, right? That's what we all want. So I created a 3-step guide to empower women on how to excel in life while managing diabetes. I walk you through the ABCs to accept, believe, and commit to life with type 1 and how this mindset shift will build your confidence and help you with the day-to-day habits we all know are so important. Then you get to learn 3 specific lifestyle practices along with actionable steps you can get started on right now. If this is what you need, just click the link in the show notes and subscribe and download my free guide, How to Thrive with Type 1 Diabetes After 40, and you get to stay in touch with me and get early access to my group and my one-on-one coaching programs. So sounds like you just visit the link in the show notes and check it out. Now back to the show. So one of the things, or really the things that you help women with is to feel strong.
Yeah.
And to be, I love this, pain-free. Yeah. And to be confident in all areas and aspects of our body, all those things. And it resonates with all of us. Again, age, obviously, I think it becomes more apparent as we're getting older, and hopefully we're becoming more in tune with really how our body's feeling and really to look at, those things that really could be affecting it. But as you probably know how inflammatory sugar is.
Mm-hmm.
And it's another reason, obviously, when we're going to the doctor, we're getting those A1C tests. That's probably the worst, 2 or 3 visits a year because it's such a grade that we're getting. But it's so reflective of really what's going on in some cases. And I won't get into the details of that as well, because there's a lot going on with the day-to-day of managing diabetes. So there's more to the story than the A1C
Yeah.
percentage. But it is important for us to understand how important, these actions that we can take to eliminate that pain going,
Yeah.
years to come, right?
Yeah. And I like to think of it like it's kind of a two-pronged approach in certain aspects. You have the chemical side of things on the inside of the joint itself that determines how good your joints feel, how much pain you experience on a daily basis. The levels of inflammation throughout your body play a huge role in that. If you have chronic inflammation, because you do have unbalanced glucose and your sugar levels aren't where they should be, you will experience that type of almost chemical induced pain. But you also have mechanical. And this is kind of going back to obviously the chemical side, we still have some control there, but the mechanical side, we have a lot of control over that. And a lot of pain in any body part stems from a framework. I'm like a framework gal. I love frameworks. So it stems from like three things. And I call it my PSF framework. So the posture of that joint, the strength of the joint, and the flexibility around the joint. So if any of those three things are not functioning adequately for how that joint was designed to function, you will eventually experience pain in that area. And so if you have a painful hip socket or a painful shoulder or a painful lumbar spine, we can absolutely look at the chemical side of things. Like, do I have chronic inflammation that's going on in my body that could potentially be creating this pain? We want to address that. But what are the mechanical factors here too? Do I have poor alignment at this joint? Do I have inadequate strength, like muscular strength around this area? Do I have inadequate mobility around, like, am I too tight? Are my hips too tight? And is this creating a problem? So all of those things we can improve and address and significantly improve someone's like how they experience that pain.
So what does a typical workout, and because I know no two people are alike or typical in any means, but just give me a kind of an idea of what that sort of workout would be for somebody, let's say past 40, that's been active all her life, but maybe needs to kind of get a little closer with exactly what's going on with her body. She lives with type 1 diabetes. She knows movement's important. But maybe she hasn't been lifting weights. Maybe she hasn't been lifting heavy weights. And I think this is a great conversation because women in general, we are, we get that, there's that myth that we're going to get big and bulky. And you and I both know that that's not going to happen. But that's what they're, fearing or visualizing. So what are those steps? What are how do you walk through somebody like that that's starting out with that sort of this is where they are?
Well, it definitely starts with, this is where having a coach is so helpful. Someone who can guide you through the movements that are going to give you a really well-balanced program. Because we do want to make sure that we're strengthening all the right areas, we're mobilizing the right areas. Like, there are spots on your body that aren't supposed to be super flexible. Like, your IT band is not supposed to be crazy flexible. Your lumbar spine is not supposed to be super flexible. So if you show up and pile in a bunch of lumbar spine stretching exercises into your routine, we could end up with a problem. We could get some low back pain. So having a coach that knows how your body is designed to operate and function and gives you a set of exercises that can ensure that you're moving your body in a direction of functioning the best. So we're strengthening the areas that need to be stronger. We're mobilizing the areas that need to be more flexible. This does not necessarily mean that you have to start with weights. And I think this is really helpful for a lot of women to understand, is that your fitness journey, it's a journey. And it's okay to look at it as here's a starting line. And then this is a journey that goes out in front of me. I don't need to plot myself into this journey like really close to the finish line. And I think that's where we make a lot of mistakes with our fitness in that sense. It's like we hear everyone telling us like, you need to lift heavy, you need to lift heavy. It's like that might be where we end up. But if you're not familiar with strength training movements in general, let's say you've only ever done cardio or you've only ever done like a Zumba class or jazzercise, like me putting a really heavy dumbbell in your hand and saying, okay, give me some deadlifts and squats and overhead presses. We're going to find yourself like, you're going to run away from me. You're going to hate the process and you might get hurt. So that could be where we end up, but that doesn't mean that we need to start there. And so actually for most women that are coming off of maybe a long hiatus of strength training, or maybe they've never done it before, I always say, let's spend 3 months just using your body weight. Like, let's get all of the equipment out of the equation. We don't want any of distractions. I want you to learn how to move, push, pull, brace, hold your body properly so that we're getting all those good, like really good alignment. You're building up that control, body awareness. And so when we get to the point 3 months down your journey, I can hand you a dumbbell and you'll know what to do with your body. You're not having to learn too many things all at once. And then we lay some good foundation with that lighter weight. And then we eventually build up to lifting much, much heavier weights. So if you can think about your fitness journey as like, this is a journey. I can see where I'm going to end up, but that doesn't mean that I should start there right now. And that's
Yeah,
the
that's so
wisest
important.
way to go about it.
Right. Because we want to keep taking steps forward, not two forward, one back, right?
Exactly.
Injuries and just that.
Well, and I think that is the unfortunate experience for a lot of women that maybe did weightlifting before or worked with a trainer that pushed them too hard, too fast, or showed up to a boot camp class and their body wasn't quite ready for it. You start to get that fear of, I don't want to hurt myself. And especially as we're getting older, there's, we already have maybe a few aches and pains. The last thing you want is to have an injury, And so for many women, that fear of I'm going to hurt myself prevents them from doing anything. So I feel like it's really encouraging for women to know it's okay to take it slow and to work yourself up to that point. And we can eliminate all of that fear in the process and get you to where you want to be in a really strategic, planned out way.
Right. And I'm sure like for you, when you're working with clients, you are educating them on how important muscle is. Right. So what have you seen personally? Because I can see you, and well, I think a lot of people online can see you too. You're very fit, and you definitely practice what you preach.
Yeah.
So how has that made a difference as you are aging as well?
This is interesting because it goes back to that word you used earlier, control. It feels good to know that I have so many tools in my toolbox to ensure that my body stays strong and mobile and active for as long as I can. So as much as is within my control, right? So what that looks like on a weekly basis for myself is that, yes, I do lift weights at least twice a week. But I strength train 3 days a week. So sometimes that third time is just body weight only strength training. It might be at a faster pace, so it's a little bit more metabolic. But I will tell you that decline push-ups and pistol squats and lunge jumps and those things are only body weight only. And let me tell you, those are some of the hardest workouts out there. So
absolutely,
it doesn't need to be like super heavy lifting to create a big difference in your body. But I do expose my muscles to pretty heavy loads at least twice a week. But anything more than that is too much for my body. And I find it's too much for most women.
Yeah, it's important to stop and recognize that. And
yeah,
because pain and symptoms I mean, our body's talking to us. There's
yes.
these
And
things
you
are
have
happening
to
for a
listen.
purpose. I know that's the hard part because
Yeah.
we think we can push through it. Yeah.
And to know like, okay, these harder, because so many of us have the mentality of like, if I show up to a workout, it needs to make me sweat. It needs to be really hard. It needs to move the needle. Like this needs to be like all out effort. And I'm here to give permission to all the women that it actually should not be. It really should not push you to the limits every single time you work out. The best program has hard days buffered with light days. So to give you a good example of what this looks like in real life,
Yeah,
I strength train Monday, Wednesday, Friday. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, I just do like a yoga style, like light body weight only, like dynamic stretching routine, maybe just 15, 20 minutes long. And then I really like to go for a walk every day in the afternoon. So staying moving somehow every day. But as far as like the hard, high intensity workouts, I only do that 2, 3 days a week. So using those other lighter routines as very intentional buffers so that it helps your body recover and rejuvenate. Because that is something that happens as you get older. It does take longer for your body to heal itself. That turnover process, the protein turnover, even the bones, the muscle turnover, it's a little bit of a slower process. So when you were in your 20s, you might have been able to get away with 3 back-to-back workouts on 3 days in a row, going really hard and heavy, like sprint routines and all this intensity. You probably will put yourself in a situation where you're over fatigued and potentially at risk for injuring yourself pretty bad if you don't fit in these really intentional buffer workouts.
And, something that is very helpful, no matter what age we are managing blood sugar. And, this is a topic, obviously, I'm sure some of your clients, even some of the women you're working with, whether or not they have type 1 diabetes or not, maybe they come to you with pre-diabetes type 2, which unfortunately is really becoming epidemic. And those rates increase as we're aging. That is part of the endocrine system. When we are getting older, our insulin becomes resistant. I'm seeing more and more of that myself. Women that are coming to me, they're in the perimenopause stage. They're not on hormone replacement yet. And they're wondering what the heck is going on with my body. All the things I used to do is no longer working. And I can relate to that as well, because I went through those same struggles when I was going through that time of life as well.
Yeah.
And because I've always been very consistent, and suddenly the consistency wasn't adding up. So frustrating. But it's nice to know that there's a reason. So there is a hormonal reason why this is happening. But steady state, I love that term, steady state, because you describe some things that we could be doing, on the off days. But something I try to emphasize too, and maybe you can help me with this point, is everything counts, especially when it's to try to keep the blood sugar and the insulin within our body more sensitive. So housework, washing the car, taking the dog for a walk, all those things, they add up very, very, very nicely.
Yes. And it's what I like to call neat. I don't know if you've heard of this term before. You probably have.
I did hear that on one of your shows. And it's funny because and I didn't write it down because I unfortunately did not remember the acronym. But thank you for reminding me. Here we go.
Yes. So neat. And it stands for non-exercise activity. And here's the big word, thermogenesis. So non-exercise activity thermogenesis. So this is everything you mentioned. This is all of the movement that we do throughout the day that's not part of like a planned workout. And this stuff adds up and has a dramatic impact on all of your body systems, especially your blood sugar regulation. And frequently if we're someone who likes to have a workout routine each day, or we're aiming for that, and we all should be, what trap we can find ourselves getting into is we get up, we get our workout done, we check off that box, and then we're completely sedentary the rest of the day. And we feel like I already moved, so I don't need to, I can just find chairs everywhere I go, and I can try to just like sit all day long. But if we kind of switched our brain and said, yes, I got that workout done. That's wonderful. That's an important thing for me to do. But let me also look for other ways to just stay moving throughout the day. And these little things are so powerful. Melissa, I'm sure you know what it does to your body to just go for a 5 to 10 minute walk right after a meal. Like what that does to your blood sugar levels and your insulin sensitivity in that moment. Something as short as walking to the mailbox and back. And we have a tendency to think that's not enough. That's not big enough to make a difference for our body. But someone who's pre-diabetic or starting to be concerned about their blood sugar levels or is already diabetic, these little moments of activity throughout the day have a huge impact on how your system handles and uses those sugars. So it's absolutely worth it. Every little bit is worth it.
Yeah. And it's empowering and it helps with the mindset. And we need all the help we can get with the chronic disease to feel like we are empowered with our choices every day. So and that's another example of a something that we can put into the day that can kind of stack on top of one, on each other, into other good habits.
Yeah. And the habit stacking, I love that you brought that up because it's something I really enjoy teaching. And there's a couple ways to habit stack. You can take, one habit and then keep that going as you add in another habit. Now you got 2 habits going in tandem, and then you add in a third one. But another way to habit stack, which is really a cool way to do it too, is to almost like anchor one habit to another habit that you're already doing. And so what do you do throughout the day that you just do automatically? It's a habit that you don't have to think about. It's something you already do. It could be personal hygiene, like brushing your teeth. It could be something like just eating lunch. And how can you anchor another habit that you would like to work on with that thing that you already do? So you've probably heard of people like work on your balance while you're brushing your teeth. That would be an example of good anchoring or habit anchoring. Another one that I really encourage people to do is when you have lunch, after you eat lunch, go get the mail. Like go for that, like let that be the moment of the day that you go to the mailbox and back. Because that gives you a little bit of that post-meal walk that can have a dramatic impact on your health. So looking for these little moments throughout the day, what is something I already do? And how can I start to anchor something simple with that thing? So it's this and that, like this and that. And so you start to develop this really cool bunch of habits that are all improving your health a little bit at a time.
Absolutely. Let's jump over and talk about nutrition, because I know you have a lot of great advice on this as well. I'm a big advocate on protein, something that I continue to coach on and to encourage my clients to do. I'm working on it myself. And I don't know about you, but I've got to be pretty strategic with my protein. Yeah. Just like anything that we have in the fridge and that we have on hand, we have to really make sure it's available to keep it consistent. And you mentioned something. This is a quote that you had was "Eat more protein," and this is kind of out of context, but I think you'll probably recognize it. So to eat more protein it helps us to be, we will be less likely to eat unhealthy foods, whether this is, within a meal or a snack or whatever. I immediately gravitated to that because I say that a lot as well, because when we can, and you mentioned the pros, which is the produce and the protein. I love that.
Yeah.
Lots of vegetables, get the protein, the vegetables, the good, healthy, real food, and fill up on that, get satisfied with that. And you'd be surprised how that other stuff, the sugar, the carbs, is not going to be necessary, because those foods are essential. Sugar and carbohydrates, the starchy carbs is what I mean, because vegetables are non-starchy. Those are not something our body necessarily needs to function and move well.
Right. Well, and I think most of us come at this from like kind of through the back door. We're thinking like, oh, I need to eat less sugar. I need to eat less of those processed carbohydrates. I need to eat less of all of this rich, decadent, splurge-worthy food. And we try to like restrict that and pull that out of our diet. But I like to encourage women, like, let's go in the front door and first add as much of the good stuff on your plate as possible. So kind of changing your mindset from I can't have to not yet. And say, okay, in this moment, I want that cookie, I want that candy bar, I want that dessert, I want that pastry. And instead of saying, like, I can't have that, just tell yourself, well, maybe, but not yet. Let me first have pros. So this comes back to what you just mentioned, having protein, as much protein as I can put on my plate, and then a couple servings of fresh produce. It could be fruit, could be vegetables, like load it up. The beautiful thing with even fruit is that it's really high in fiber and it makes it so it's a much slower digesting carbohydrate. And so it's not going to have the same impact on your body as having a candy bar. So let's load up your plate, have protein and produce first. Get your stomach full of those really good nutrient dense foods, and then circle back and say, do I still want to have that thing? Now that I'm full and satisfied and filled up on the healthy foods, do I still want that cookie? And if the answer is yes, then okay, like let's have it. But the likelihood that you overindulge on it and eat too much of it, have the entire sleeve of cookies, like that's not going to happen. It's pretty rare that happens after your stomach is nice and full with the healthy stuff. So come in the front door with your nutrition and say, instead of trying to remove stuff off my plate and focus on all the things I'm not supposed to eat, let me try to do this a different way and try to load up and eat big, robust meals that are full of protein and produce, and start there and see what naturally happens to the other unhealthier foods.
Totally agree with that. I studied at IIN, and one of the tag lines that we were really taught and it was emphasized was to crowd out. So it's the same.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, because our minds are taught, that we're going to be deprived, that we're going to miss out. But if you can add in what's going to serve us better, it's going to help our body better. Those other things just naturally get crowded out. It is amazing.
Yeah.
And our taste buds change, our wants and our desires for different types of food. I can say this for myself. I used to be a major bread eater. It's still something I love. I will say I love bread. But, we don't keep it in the house anymore because I've lost the desire to even buy it. Because my husband and I, we satiate ourselves with all of the foods that you're mentioning. It takes time. It doesn't happen overnight.
I love that you said that. It absolutely can take time. And so to establish habits that feel easy to do, that you can do them forever. And that's what I love about the concept of eat your pros. We can take that anywhere we're at. I'll have some women that I coach. They'll be like, I'm going on a cruise next week. What should I do with my nutrition? I'm like, the same thing that we've been working on.
Right.
It's a different environment. So you get to practice your new skills in a new environment, which is really cool and a great training opportunity. But it still comes back to where's the protein? Where's the produce? Like, let's get as much of those on your plate as you can. So whether you're at a buffet dinner or you're at a restaurant or you're at a friend's house for dinner, like this can travel with you anywhere. And so as you start to develop that skill over time, you will crowd out those unhealthier foods. And you're right, your taste buds do change. And that's where that intuitive eating comes into play. I think that's a really hard concept to grasp and understand just right out of the gate. When you've been someone for so long that just is like a box checker with eating, like I just need to fill out my app, or I just have to count up my calories or count up my macros. We've kind of turned off our brain with how food makes us feel. And so coming back to eating protein and produce and recognizing like, oh, that food makes me feel really good after I eat it. But when I have that loaf of bread, I don't feel so good. That doesn't
Right.
make me feel good.
Right.
And so you start to have an easier time making those decisions over time.
Yeah. Yeah. And then those of us with type 1 diabetes, we've got that CGM telling us whether or not, and this is not a judgment thing because
Yeah.
I've been up and down this road for many years as well. So it's the data, it's the information, and we can choose to learn from it and to listen to ourself and our body and our blood sugar response and make those future decisions accordingly. So again, it's about empowering ourselves with what we want to, how we want to feel, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yes.
how we
And
want
being able
those
to
results.
connect, like when I see these numbers on my CGM, how do I feel in the moment?
Mhm,
And is that a
mhm,
feeling I like? Is
mhm,
that something I like to feel? Does that feel good? And how can I, if it doesn't feel good, what choices can I make to not feel that way again?
right, right,
And
right. What can
and
I
when
do
I
a little
make
better
these,
next
like
time?
when I have the loaf of bread, I can start to connect and associate. This is how I feel after I have that loaf of bread. But I
Mhm,
can also see the data here. I can see what that does to my numbers. Okay, you're gathering all this evidence of why I don't feel good. And
mm,
that's where you get a really powerful habit motivator when you can connect those positive or negative feelings
mm,
with your actions. It's
mhm.
very powerful.
Yeah, it really is. And I often say we're somewhat at an advantage, those of us that have to monitor.
Yes.
It can be a little micromanaging, but we're one of the we're the few that do get to get that information to learn from. So yeah,
Yeah.
always trying to turn a negative into a positive. It's important.
See, it's
Yeah,
really
that's
important.
right. Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So before we go today, this has been a great conversation. I feel like we really could have talked about a lot more, especially on the nutrition and the food side of it. What if there was three tips
Mm.
that our listeners could take away today to get started? You've shared some really good ideas. What would that be?
Well, I think the first one, kind of circling back to what we were talking about earlier, is increase your NEAT. Okay. So just
Mhm,
work on increasing all of that non exercise activity. Let's just look for every opportunity to move your body. So increase your NEAT. That would be the first tip. I think the second tip is eat your pros. That's really easy to
mhm,
remember too. It's just, okay, the next nutrient opportunity. That's what I like to call meals. Like, this is just another nutrient opportunity. So the
mhm,
next time you get to one of those opportunities, eat your pros. Like, see if you can put protein and produce on your plate.
mhm,
So that would be the second tip. And I think the third tip is to recognize that you're on a journey, like we talked about earlier, that what you do today could potentially determine where you end up 2 months, 3 months, 6 months from
mhm,
now. But that doesn't mean that you need to go all in and jump all in at where you want to be. So, really see, especially if you feel like you're closer to the starting line, like, oh, I've been out of a fitness routine for a long time. I haven't been taking care of my health as much as I want to. Our tendency is to jump all in and
mhm.
try to change all of the things at once.
Yeah.
Instead, let me challenge everybody to say, no, let's not do that. We're not going to change all of the things at once. That might be the direction, the big picture of where you want to end up. But how can you move in that direction with one small step today? And it
Mhm,
could be as simple as, I've got a lot of fantastic exercises that I demonstrate on my Instagram channel. So go find one of those movements. I try to just show
mhm,
one at a time, maybe three tops. Otherwise, it gets
mhm,
so overwhelming. We overwhelm
mhm,
ourselves. So just
mhm,
find one of my stretches that you know is going to feel good, maybe for your posture, for your core, and just do one. And that can start to get the ball rolling and move you in that direction of where you might want to be 6 months from now.
I like that. Yeah, yeah. And yes, your Instagram and you have a lot of videos on YouTube as well.
Yes.
So everything is shared on those platforms, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yes, that's great advice. Yeah, start small and sustainable too.
Mhm.
We want to be around as long as we're, here. We don't have control over that either, but we
Yeah.
want to feel and be functional as long as we can. So, real important information. So I appreciate you, Megan, and coming in here and just making it so simple and just relating to our
Yeah.
audience. Yeah, it's really
Yeah. Well,
good.
thank you so much for having me, Melissa. And I just hope that this blesses everyone that hears it and has a
Mhm.
little bit of inspiration
Yeah,
today.
I appreciate it. So where can our listeners find you, Megan? What's the best
Well,
way? And we'll definitely link all this here in the show notes to make it
yeah.
easy.
Well, since everyone here is a podcast listener, definitely come check out my podcast, Melissa. You're going to be a guest on my show as well. So that's Care Simplified. So come check that out anywhere that you get your podcasts. And then on Instagram, for sure, you can find me at Megan Dahlman, my name, just all together. And
Mhm.
then over on YouTube, it's just the name of my company. So Vigeo Fit. So Vigeo Fit is where you can find me on YouTube, or you could just Google my name and find me
Right,
there too.
right.
Yeah.
Yes, finding one another is not hard, generally
It's
speaking,
not
right?
hard. I
No, it's the
know.
good and bad, right?
Just plug me into Google and you'll find everywhere.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, thanks again, Megan, and hope everybody reaches out and finds all those gems that you offer. And again, appreciate your time today and
Yeah. Of
sharing all your wisdom with our listeners.
course. Anytime, Melissa. Thank you.
Yes, thanks, and we will see you back in here next week, same time, same place. Bye for now. Thank you for listening to the Type 1 and Midlife podcast. We are so grateful for the time that we spent together today. And if this conversation resonated with you, or you just love connecting with others living with T1D, please take a moment to leave a rating and review. Your feedback helps us reach more people who need this community and resources. And if you realize you need more support than you're currently getting, remember you don't have to struggle alone. Visit me at abundanthealthwithmelissa.com for free resources on mastering type 1 diabetes in menopause and to stay connected and learn about my coaching programs. We look forward to being together next Monday. So make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss a single episode. Remember that together we can age gracefully with type 1 diabetes.